Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Tactics Board. Two games that certainly did not go to plan for Norwich City. Drawing, first of all, with Derby County at Carrow Road and then losing there to Preston in just their third defeat since October 2023 at home. So they really do need to bounce back, but the beauty of the Championship is that they get opportunities to do that very quickly. And tomorrow they face Hull City up in Humberside. You know the drill here on Tactics Board. First of all, I'm going to take you through the team that I think Johannes Hoff-Torp will pick for the game. Then we're going to come on to some of the tactics and the strategy of it, where Norwich will need to be strong, where they'll need to be aware of some of Hull's threats. And then we're going to come on to the strange topic of long balls, which we didn't maybe expect to be talking about too much when Torp came into the building, but they were a bit of a theme of that loss to Preston. So I just wanted to talk about that subject. But first, we're going to talk about that predicted starting 11. So without further ado, here it is. So I've gone for Angus Gunn in goal, Kellen Fisher at right back, Shane Duffy and Callum Doyle in the centre of defence, with Lucian Mahovo at left back, Jacob Wright, Jakob Sorensen and Anis Ben Slimane in midfield, with Lewis Dobbin on the right, Borja Sainz on the left and Josh Sargent through the middle up front. Now, it will be certainly interesting when Torp does announce that team news, or when the club announce that team news at 2 p.m. tomorrow. But either way, it shouldn't have Marcelino Nunez in there. Another injury for him caused in that Preston game, a tackle that I'm sure many saw, and there were some pictures afterwards that actually were pretty gruesome. Some blood around his ankle and his foot. Torp said that it went blue and got pretty bruised as well. So he misses out on this one, and it sounds like one where hopefully he'll be back fairly quickly, but probably too much pain for him going into this weekend. So that leaves a midfield problem to solve that, to be honest, was created by the performance anyway. Of course, it was Slimane, Schwartau and Wright in that midfield in the first half and for the start of the second. And it just didn't really look too good. I think Wright was struggling a little bit to adapt to the pace of things, maybe didn't quite have that pace to cope with how Preston wanted to play. And when he did get on the ball, it was mainly sideways and backwards. Of course, there is still room for patience with him and plenty of it given his age. But for this one, he'll need to really step up, especially with the sorts of qualities that Hull have. However, you look at some of those injuries. Kenny McLean is a doubt as well after he, of course, withdrew in the warm-up for the Preston game. No Marcondes, no Nunez, as I mentioned, no Michael Forson or Gabriel Forsyth or Liam Gibbs. So really it's sort of bare bones stuff, and it does feel like Wright probably is the best option for that deeper central midfield position. So I've gone for him. Of course, he could be slightly further forward with Jakob Sorensen in a deeper role, but I think Sorensen probably will play because even though he's actually been dropped out of the matchday squad, we've seen how close he can be to the starting 11 and to gain minutes pretty quickly. He played very well against Watford away from home, I thought. Came on and did okay against Preston at Carrow Road as well. And I think given the fact that Norwich will probably need to be a little bit more solid, and although they will want to play a sort of attacking brand of football, as Torp referenced in his pre-match press conference, Sorensen does give you a little bit more solidity and a bit more calm that maybe they lacked in the Preston game on Tuesday night. So I think Sorensen probably does come in, and then Slimane, who I actually don't think has been at his best since he came back from injury, but of course he is still developing match fitness. It's still something that he's working on, and we have seen what a good player he can be. So hopefully he can sort of re-establish that form, and probably Norwich need that from him because with the number of midfielders around him who have been injured, they need somebody to step up in that creative role, and he's somebody with those good feet, with those ideas. And Norwich have been sort of sorely lacking one of those in the last couple of games. So if he can step up, that could be really big for them. I've gone for the defence staying as it is because Torp sort of praised them in his pre-match press conference, and it didn't sound like he was likely to make any changes going into this one. He's also obviously gone for quite a solid back four over the last few weeks since Mahovo came in, and that central pairing of Shane Duffy and Callum Doyle both of them have started every single Championship game, which tells you how much he likes that duo. So I've gone with the same back four, or the back five even, with Angus Gunn, and actually I've kept the same front three. I actually asked Torup about Lewis Dobbin going into the game, because I thought it really spoke volumes about how highly he rates him when Sainz came back in that left wing position that he's made his own. And rather than putting him on the bench and maybe playing Ante Cianats out on the right, or Mate Jurasek, obviously Onel Hernandez is somebody who will come back pretty soon as well. And there are other players who've played there. Oscar Schwartau is one of them, of course. But rather than play any of those, Torup went for Dobbin on the right-hand side. And although it maybe wasn't his best game, I think everyone can see whenever he's on the pitch the qualities that he brings. He's got that rare quality nowadays in football of, as soon as he gets the ball, wanting to make something happen. I think that's reaped rewards for Norwich already. And although you'd like to see him produce maybe a little bit more often in the final third and finish off those attacks with a bit more quality, somebody like that who wants to make something happen, especially when Norwich have had the attacking struggles that they have in the last couple of games, I think brings a lot. And then alongside him, obviously, Sainz and Sargent, who hopefully should be pretty fresh after coming off quite early in that Preston game for fitness reasons and not to overload him with minutes. Sainz played a full 90, which certainly wasn't the plan going into the game, but after 4 days to rest and recover, you'd hope that both of them are good and well to go. And of course, when they are, they will be in that team. But either way, it should be interesting when that team news drops tomorrow afternoon. Coming on to Hull, and when you look at how they play the game, it should be quite an entertaining one actually this weekend. They want to press high, they want to dominate possession. They have a 4-3-3 that in some ways is pretty similar to Norwich's, and they've got a few players who actually are quite good to watch. We'll try to take players on, we'll try to create things individually. Abu Kamara, Norwich Academy product, of course, one of those, and he's really made a name for himself and a place for himself in that team. But they do try to play the same way in most games, which actually you'd say for Ruben Sellés, their head coach, going into a job where actually he was battling against relegation. Usually you'd warn against that in the Championship. And I think we've seen that go pretty badly at times when managers have prioritised a good style of play over maybe pragmatism and results when they go into a club who are struggling with a relegation fight. But actually that's worked quite well for Hull. They're not completely clear of it yet, but they are certainly producing better performances than they were earlier on in the season under Tim Volter, and certainly better than they did when they came to Carrow Road and lost 4-0. They want to play the ball out from the back, so that does give Norwich an opportunity to go and press high and create chances using that. It's something that they have done before this season, but it's one of the more inconsistent parts of their game, so it's something they'll need to do pretty well. Of course, with Josh Sargent back, that should make that a little bit easier because of the physicality and the pace that he provides, as well as the football brain to press really well. So that may be an avenue for creating chances against Norwich, but also the fact that Hull like to press high means that there should be opportunities for them in behind if they can play it around them pretty well. But they will need to play it around them well. They will need to be focused on the ball playing out from the back. Otherwise, with so many dangerous players in such advanced positions, Hull will be in a really good position to go and profit. So a bit of a risk and reward situation. Torup said he wanted to maybe go back to basics, but not in the sense that most managers of English football teams would probably mean. He meant he wanted the team to go back to the more rudimentary or the rudiments of the style that he brought to Carrow Road originally, Hofball, as it's called, of course. So that probably does mean they'll try to play out from the back a little bit more. There will be fewer long balls, as I'm going to come on to and talk about, which means probably that the Norwich fans will enjoy the entertainment a bit more. But it is quite risk and reward, and we will see how it goes. But if they can do it well against a Hull team who will be trying to play in a similar way but have certainly struggled at home, then the opportunity is there for them to go and get 3 points on the board and make up for the last two games, which of course have been pretty disappointing. Now, I like to finish with a little bit of a topical discussion about a tactical part of the game. And on today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about long balls, which I think was something people picked up on in the Preston game. There were quite a lot of them from Norwich, and there wasn't a great success rate from them, to be honest. It was quite a common thing for Shane Duffy or Callum Doyle in particular, but other players at times to, when there weren't many options, just look up and try to clip a ball in behind, which I suppose in many senses does or should work when you've got Josh Sargent up there, somebody with quite an imposing physical figure with a bit of pace to run in behind and who doesn't mind a battle with centre-backs. But aside from that, there aren't really many reasons why it makes sense. I asked Torup about it at the pre-match press conference. I wondered if it was just something where the players were getting a bit frustrated with the ability to pass, or the lack of the ability to pass the ball through the thirds against Preston, and they decided they wanted to go a bit more direct. But that was actually something that Torup said they did on purpose. They wanted to create a slightly more open game, not just a frustrating situation where they were passing the ball around without any real danger in front of a deep Preston defence. But part of the reason why it didn't work was because Preston actually pressed so well. So they stopped Doyle and Duffy having the time really to find those quality balls into the channels or to find a bit of space for Sargent to run into. And that actually was exactly what Norwich were trying to do, because basically Preston's whole system, and they showed that in this game but also in the reverse fixture in October, was to find those channels and to use the opportunity when they weren't pressed very high to play the ball in behind and to get their strikers into those positions. And that was exactly what Norwich tried to do at times, but they just weren't too successful with it. They still feel like a team that's set up to pass the ball around on the floor, and actually I think that's what fans want to see. It's what they've wanted to see since Torup came in. And of course there will always be some who want the ball to go forward quickly. They don't want the risk of playing out from the back, but this is a team that has been drilled for a long time now in playing the ball out slowly from the back, in movement, in creating options. And I felt that this, first of all, wasn't their strength, but also when you're directed to go a little bit longer, it maybe doesn't give you the incentive to make those movements. I thought the team was quite static at times. They weren't really moving around and giving options to the players in possession. So it gave them a bit of a get out and it stopped that movement, I thought, to an extent. And then when there wasn't much movement, there was always a solution of going long, which there isn't usually for Norwich and how they set up. So I'm not sure that's something that suits Norwich going forward, really. I can understand Torup's tactical reasoning, and there have been times when it's made sense. But most of the time, I think if you're trying to develop this group to go forward and be a team that plays the ball on the floor most of the time and plays the ball through the thirds, then it suits you in the long term, and at the moment in the short term to stick with it and try to play that football, because this isn't really a team that's geared to doing things the other way. So in my opinion, at least, the good news for Norwich this weekend is what Torup said about going back to basics, about playing the way that they have maybe earlier in the season. And I think given the way that Hull want to play, the fact that it can leave them open at times, that could give them an opportunity to get a good result against Hull, especially on the back of a couple of losses for them. They maybe won't have the confidence to go and press high with that physicality and that no fear attitude, and that might leave some space for Norwich. But of course, they are dealing with their own confidence issues, and they will be after two disappointing results. So it will be interesting to see if they can turn that around and make a really big statement, insert themselves back into the playoff race after a couple of blows in a row. Whatever happens, of course, we will have it covered across our channels. So if you haven't already, go to pinkun.com/subscribe and you'll have all the coverage, all the analysis, all the opinion around the game. Of course, I'll be back for the next one, but hopefully there's a positive tint after a win over Hull this weekend. Right, see you then, and thank you very much for watching.